So I think the future of Web3, that it's going to evolve into technologies that are able to combine the two forms of decentralization. So decentralization around the service provisioning aspect of things and around the data that those services manipulate and work on. I think the blind computer is a good example of that, because it contains this traditional blockchain element, but it also contains this other new element that is able to provide protection against misuse of your information.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 58 of Colors of Web3 and Entrepreneurship. My name is Lam, your Web3 host. For those of you who are new to the show, Colors of Web3 and Entrepreneurship is the show highlighting the journeys of builders and innovators in Web3 and entrepreneurship. Some topics expected in Web3 may get technical, but we do our best to keep it accessible for most people. Here today, I'm joined by Miguel de Vega. He's one of the co-founders and also Chief Scientist at Nillion. Miguel, can you give a quick introduction of yourself?
Yes, thank you, Lam, for having me here. Hello everyone. So essentially, my background is in engineering and also in maths. So I have a master's in engineering and also a PhD in maths. I've been working in the backbone of the internet, developing algorithms to model the traffic that it goes through them, and that took me to big data. So essentially, that then led me to AI. I've been working in AI for quite a lot before the LLM revolution. And then in 2013, I started working with zero-knowledge proofs. And that eventually took me to crypto in 2017, which is when I started trading personally with my bot. I also met with Andrew Masanto, co-founder of Hedera and Reserve. And essentially, we were playing with the idea of creating a privacy coin back then, but we kind of decided that it wasn't the right time. So it wasn't until later, in 2021, that we kind of figured out that the time was the right time for privacy enhancing technologies in general to create a new type of decentralized infrastructure that is able to handle personal and private information, in Web3. And so that's when it all started.
Awesome, cool. Wow, so it sounds like you've done quite a lot in your previous careers as well. I think you said that you studied math, right, and engineering background, and then went into like artificial intelligence. What year did you break into that field? I assume this is like in late 2000. Is that right?
Yeah, so I started my career in 2000, and I started working for large telecom companies, Nokia and also Siemens.
Oh, Nokia.
Kind of working with all types of network, wireless networks, optical fiber networks, and kind of working with developing models that kind of allow you to predict the future and optimize the parameters for those networks. So coming out from that, there were I think I created 27 patents in 3 years for the PhD. Some of them are now being currently used in the backbone of the internet. But that, it required really working with a lot of data, because I was working with the backbone measurements of the big, links that connect continents and big centers of bit nodes in the network. And so that naturally led to AI. So then I applied the AI in other contexts, like for the banking sector and also for the advertising industry. And in parallel, I've always been really, really interested in maths. So that's what, that's how I got into zero knowledge proofs. And then that led into crypto.
I see. Cool. So were you actually working in the banking and advertising industry? Also applying AI? Okay.
Yes.
Cool. Yeah. So I think I guess it was during the 2010, right? I think AI was in
exactly.
New models. Yeah. Nice. Interesting. Revolution. And then could you tell me more about what you did in the past? I think you said you worked in ZK also back in the day. I think.
Yeah. So
how has it evolved?
Initially I was interested in working, in Web2. So using zero knowledge proofs in the context of authentication and identity verification, so that you don't need to share your credentials with a server to be able to authenticate with that server, or the same for your identity attributes. But then it became clear that if you want to do things that require mixing private secrets from not just you, but from other users as well, then zero knowledge proofs are not enough, because there is always a prover that is able to see all the information in plain text, right? So as soon as you want to mix information from two different sources, from two different users or more, and you want to keep that information secret, then you need to change paradigm. So that's when I started getting interested in other privacy enhancing technologies like multi-party computation or fully homomorphic encryption.
Cool. Yeah, and I think we both know that those are very much heavily applied today in fully
Yes.
homomorphic encryption, and then MPC is also heavily applied in Web3 today by many companies. Cool. Could you tell us a bit more about like how did you first discover Web3? I think you said you joined 2017, right? Was it because of the tech, or what was the first thing that you discovered?
Yeah, I think I owe it to Andrew Masanto. He kind of opened up my eyes to this whole new world, which was, it was hidden from me, because I was working like in very traditional sectors in Web2 with banking and whatnot. So yeah, he showed me like this crazy industry that is really innovation friendly, and where zero knowledge proofs in particular have found like a natural fit, and you have zero knowledge proofs in privacy coins, for example, like Zcash and Monero and stuff like that. And is a community really open to cryptographic innovations and developments. And I immediately connected with the ethos of decentralization. The message that you don't need to trust a third party to provide you with service. You don't need to trust them with anything. Essentially, you want to minimize that level of trust that you place on them, so that they don't have the power to change the nature of the service they provide to you. In this case, if it's asset related, it's really important to prevent things like double spending and stuff like that. And it really kind of connected me with me very deeply. Like I thought, it felt like this is the next step, evolutionary step in technology, whereby in decentralizing everything, you kind of get rid of centralized actors and the impact that they can have, a negative impact on everything in our world. If you think about how the world is built, it's all built on top of hierarchies, and at the top of the hierarchies, there's always like a bunch of people with access power to tamper with everything, to corrupt the system, to exert negative influence on it, to take advantage of everything. So this technology kind of removes that and places trust on the maths, which kind of resonates a lot with me. And so if you design a system that is fair, then it kind of self-enforces that property all across the system. And yeah, I think it's really, now that we're heading towards AI, a world where we're no longer in the era of globalization, we're now in the era of automation, and all the most sensitive processes on the planet, not only pertaining to individuals but also companies and governments, they're going to be run by automated AI. They're going to be automated by AI, and kind of humans are going to be disintermediated from the equation. So that begs the question, like, on top of which will those processes run? On top of which infrastructure, right? It cannot be Web2, because Web2, as I said before, has all these problems around trust. You have to trust the people controlling the infrastructure. That's really a bad idea when you want to automate these highly sensitive processes. And also, it's proven to be not good in terms of fault tolerance. So there's even the best companies in Web2, they have regularly they have problems, they have downtimes, they have hacks, and things like that. So Web3 has proven, I think, has a proven record of being way more fault tolerant than Web2 technologies. So I do believe that the infrastructure for the next evolutionary step, and in particular for AI, is going to be Web3. It's going to have to be Web3.
I see. Interesting. Yeah, I do also believe that like the intersection of AI and Web3 is gonna be probably more than just like AI agent on chain. There'll be more
Yeah.
new company building things as well to help to solve new problems in the world, right? But I
Yes.
do think that agent will probably have a role to play, but probably just a minor, probably.
Yeah.
Something big on that as well. Cool. So, yeah, well, before we deep dive into your company, just one fun question. I'm always curious to know what is your own, what do you do in your free time? What are your hobbies?
Oh, well, lately I don't have much free time
I bet.
because everything is so, is running so fast in the company and so on. But yeah, usually I like traveling a lot. Visiting exciting places. I like snowboarding a lot as well. I
Nice.
come from a small island in the Atlantic Ocean. It's Canary Island, so it's kind of
Oh, Canada. Nice.
yeah. So I've been always like in contact with surfing and skateboarding, but lately I don't have that much access to the ocean. So I like going eventually to the mountains and snowboarding there. Yeah,
Nice. I bet. Yeah. I mean, Web3 is pretty much like 24/7, so it's quite hard
yeah,
to get some break, right? Yeah. But I do
yeah,
believe that
absolutely.
sometimes we need to.
This is like a full-time job. It's really
Yeah,
like
exactly. Oh, I think it's like two full-time jobs, not even
well,
one.
yeah,
You know, even a full-time job, you work like 40 hours, right? But 24/7. Web3 is like, yeah, I don't think there's like a downtime unless like you force yourself, right? It's like,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, exactly. So you just have to do that.
It's funny because the other day I was sitting with Alex Page, the CEO of Nillion, and we were just
Hmm.
observing a panel of VCs and founders and crypto founders, and all the VCs were all like really worked out, like really strong, and because they have the time to, for that, and all the founders were like super thin and super, looking like really really sick. Yeah, I think is the way, is the name of the game, right? You have to give it all.
That's quite funny, yeah. But I do see that also. To be honest, I mean, I guess some VC I've talked to, it seems like they also do a lot of like media, right? Some of them, so I
Yeah,
mean they don't. I mean, and I think they also have a team, right? So it's not like necessary when you. I guess when you talk to like the what is it, the managing director or the partner, right? I think those will
yeah,
probably have more time to delegate down the team. Again, that's just some of the VC that I've known. So yeah, but founders like you always like on like what is it, founder mode 24/7, pretty much
exactly. Yeah,
like
yeah,
trying to put out the fire and
yeah.
always like new things coming up. So it's not like yeah, you don't really have much of a downtime. I feel it. Cool. Yeah. Well, without further ado, I think let's go ahead and deep dive into your company, Nillion, that you guys are building. Feel free to share any presentation or any website that you have for your company and quickly talk
Yeah,
about it. And if you can share also maybe the history and the origin, how the company was founded, that
sure.
also be interesting as well.
So let me share. All right. So yeah, this is our website. As you can see, we have humanity's first blind computer. So what is a blind computer in the first place, right? So this is the name that we gave to the infrastructure that we built. You can think of it in terms of a new type of Web3 infrastructure. So it is decentralized, but it doesn't do what blockchains do. It is not a blockchain for sure. So blockchains are concerned with maintaining these global status or state of the ledger in a consistent way. So through consensus and mechanisms. Here, we're not concerned about that. We're concerned about being able to store and compute on private information. And hence the word blind, it kind of refers to the fact that the nodes in our network, they don't really see the secrets they are computing on. They don't see the data they're working on. So that's kind of the key property. And you can think of this as a, as I said, a new type of infrastructure that is compatible with blockchains. So it kind of internally requires a blockchain for coordination, but also it's able to. So this is the coordination layer that you find here. So that's run by a blockchain that we have. But also it is able to interconnect with existing blockchains. So it's able to listen to events in existing blockchains as well as to write in smart contracts running in other blockchains.
I see.
That
Interesting.
that's really important. Yeah.
What is a is there a consensus mechanism? Oh, you can go back to the previous one for your blockchain. Yeah.
Yeah, no. Well, yeah, for the blockchain, yes, but the blockchain is really simple. Our blockchain is really running. It's just for the token, and it's also to coordinate the petnet, what we call the petnet. So the petnet is the main component of the blind computer. And it is built out of clusters of nodes. So it's like little clouds or little networks, completely independent from one another, but they do require a certain degree of coordination because they're going to be using cryptographic material like preprocessed randomness and things like that. So that's why they need consensus in order for the nodes to know which preprocessed material to use when. So that's number one. Number two, as I said, is for the token, and the token is important for the incentives. To align the incentives of all the players all the stakeholders in the ecosystem. And it's also important for staking and preventing Sybil attacks by slashing the nodes. And that is kind of the function of the blockchain. We don't require really smart contracts because all the logic is going to be run in this petnet in these clusters that are using other privacy enhancing technologies. And inside of these clusters, you can think of each cluster as achieving some form of consensus. So if you use it to store data, there will be consensus around the nodes as to what the state of that data is. And if you compute, there will be consensus around the nodes as to what the output of that computation is. So in a sense, you have like little consensus areas, but they're not coordinated. There's no single overarching state of agreement. You can also think in terms of blockchains being like a monoprocessor, like they only have one processor, and this is like a multi-processor because each one kind of works independently.
I see. Cool.
And yeah, here you have So what is this for? So we kind of like putting in terms of the type of data we can deal with. So if you think about it, blockchains, what they did is to decentralize transactions. So there is this transaction, which is a type of data and is really important. And what blockchains brought is the ability to kind of remove trust from everything, all the processes around the transaction, around transactions. So all the algorithms and all the logic that goes wrapped around the management of transactions, that is now placed on top of a decentralized infrastructure. So you don't need to trust a centralized entity to provide you with that service. But that's just a type of data, right? There's other types of data. You can think of everything that you find in Web2, like from utilities, telcos, banks, healthcare, you name it. Like there's tons of sensitive data that is not transaction data, but is nevertheless very valuable. And so that's what Nillion, that's what the blind computer aims at. It aims at providing the infrastructure for that data to be able to be decentralized as well. Meaning that you remove trust also from all those companies in Web2 that are currently working, providing you services around those types of data, and you can run those services now on a decentralized infrastructure. So you don't need to trust anyone, and no one in particular has access to your data, and nevertheless you're able to compute on it. You're able to allow people also to gain insights from it, but you're not really sharing that information. So that's kind of the main idea behind this blind computer. And now Nillion, we have we understand that our thinking is that blind computers is a category is a new category of Web3 infrastructure, and yeah, we kind of developed the first of this kind that we call the Nillion blind computer, and hence now we arrive at the why we have this sentence here. That's the reason behind it.
I see. Interesting. Yeah. First blind computer. So I guess first meaning like it hasn't existed before, right?
Correct. I mean, the technology was there. Like it's been there for almost 40 years. So this is not something that hasn't been tested properly. It has, but there's been a long development period of this technology since the mid 80s, more or less. I think that it went through three phases. The first one was about establishing the existence of these results, like mathematicians like at the beginning to, prove whether something is possible or not. It wasn't clear if it was possible to compute on data without seeing it. So that was this first period was focused around. Then the second period was like also an academic period, like driven by universities. But it was more centered around, okay, now that we know it's possible, what protocols can we develop that are optimal? And that's when all the different flavors of privacy enhancing technologies were born, like all the best protocols, like best protocols for multi-party computation, for fully homomorphic encryption, and so on. But that still was a period very academic. So papers usually ended up in showing a few results, but it was really like not on a real network. And only recently we've entered the third phase, which is when engineers come in and actually make this, take this technology, these ideas, and deploy them at scale. So we are one of the first companies doing that. We're pioneering that move from academia to actually, production ready systems. And that's when you start seeing the potential of this technology, because you're now building for scale. You're now building really, you have professionals coding instead of just, professors or PhD students. So the quality of the code is really high, and you have performance improvements because of that. Also, you care about the type of hardware you run this on top of, and the connectivity of the network, and how nodes are discovered. So there's a lot of engineering effort on this, and that's where we are now. And yeah, since we are kind of the first ones to put together all the pieces and take them to production, that's why we think we're humanity's first blind computer.
Nice. I see. Cool. Yeah. So I think you just said like the third phase is when academia put things into production, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
why cool. Yeah. I've actually also talked to a few of my guests on my podcast. I'll leave a link up here to one of the previous
Oh, great.
episodes about like quantum blockchain, a quantum safe blockchain, actually. That's
Yeah,
one of the
yeah,
professor.
yeah,
Yeah. So it's quite, yeah, it
yeah.
seems like
Quantum
this
security. Yeah,
quantum secure messaging. Oh, cool. Interesting. Yeah. Okay. So yours is also like quantum
yeah.
safe?
So
Yeah.
this is the drill. Like, there's many privacy enhancing technologies out there. I've mentioned a few, but there's more. And we don't think that there is any silver bullet that is gonna elbow out the other ones. We don't think that FHE is gonna be like the only PET around, or MPC, or ZKP, or function secret sharing, or any of the other primitives. We rather think that each one provides a unique perspective on on the trade in the trade-off space between security, performance, cost, and so it's only in the combination of these PETs that you actually find a very broad and wide design space for developers. And that's why we built what we call the orchestration layer, that is able to connect to multiple PETs and provide developers with the best out of each one. And so we have a strong bias towards quantum resistant technology. However, if we want to be backward compatible with blockchains, sometimes we have to make concessions. For example, many blockchains are still using ECDSA, which is a signature scheme that is not quantum resistant. But because we want to be able to interface with existing blockchain technology, we have to implement that protocol under MPC, so that your signature, your key is never in a centralized place, is distributed, is across the nodes in the network, and you can still instruct the system to sign transactions on your behalf without reconstructing the key. That's very nice. But the underlying signature scheme, unfortunately, is not quantum resistant. So we're obviously pushing for for the development of this, and there's proposals in place for replacements or substitutes for ECDSA that are quantum resistant, and we're very much into those. But so far, most of the blockchains, what they support is ECDSA, so we have to make a concession there. But otherwise, we have a very strong bias towards quantum resistant technology, because it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when quantum computers will be strong enough to break traditional cryptography.
Yeah. Agree. I do think that someday when the quantum computer get really strong. I forgot the exact number of the quantum bit needed to break Bitcoin cryptography, but I'm quite sure that maybe 20 years, 10, 15, 20 years, we don't know, right? I mean, we don't know. I guess
We
depend
don't
on
know,
the
but
on the pace of how fast technology evolve. And then does developer have the choice of the PET? Well, actually, maybe I should explain PET for the listener. So PET is like privacy enhancing technology, right? So they
yeah,
can
that's right.
choose among any of these. I guess like TEE would be one, right? Or trusted execution.
Yes,
Simon? Yeah, and then MPC. Yeah.
MPC and
Yeah.
FHE. So we thought about this for a long time, right? So the thing is that it's not easy to choose to know which PT is best for a given problem. So initially we were thinking along the lines of giving developers the freedom to choose, but then we kind of figured out that that would prevent, that would ban regular developers from accessing this technology because it requires cryptographic knowledge. So we've gone for an approach that where you're combining the technologies, but you don't necessarily see that. So the orchestration, for example, happens at different points. We have three main modules. One is the Nil VM, that's the general purpose compute part. The Nil DB, that's kind of the database, decentralized database, and then Nil AI, because AI is so important. Inside of each one of these, what we call blind modules, you already have a mixture of privacy enhancing technologies. For example, the Nil AI has TEs because some, agents or AI models are very large, and so they're not the software based privacy enhancing technologies are not powerful enough right now to be able to train them or run inference on them. So it has a TE component, but it also has the MPC component, and it combines both seamlessly. So you just choose what is your kind of performance slash security mix, and that's where that's the idea. You just need to care about where you want to land in terms of performance versus security, and the system will adapt and provide you with the right combination of those two PETs. So either TEs plus MPC or FHE, meaning that some of the elements in the model will be run under TEs, some others will be run under software-based solutions. That's what we are aiming for. So initially we've started with both those two flavors separately, but we're going to connect them. So right now you either go for TEs or you go for MPC, but they're going to be connected. So that's one level of orchestration. There's another one because on top of those blind modules, we build SDKs. And that's where you have higher level concepts like, this is for inference, LLM inference. And there you have inside also private racks, so retrieval augmented generation, so that you can have your personal database of sensitive information fed into the model. Or you have data analytics, which is all about running analytics on data without revealing the information. Or you have signatures. So it's kind of a higher level, closer to product. And those two make use of different blind modules, which by extent also end up using different privacy enhancing technologies. For example, if you have the LLM SDK, that's going to make use of the Nil database as well as the Nil AI. And inside of each one, you will have different flavors. So you see that's the kind of the idea that you start using components, and inside of those components, there is a combination of the different privacy enhancing technologies, but you don't need to be an expert in cryptography to be able to use that. That's kind of the end goal here. And nevertheless, you're taking advantage of those different privacy enhancing technologies, and you're able to build powerful solutions.
I see. Yeah, I think that makes sense. So that you want to make it as modular and as flexible enough to adapt
Yeah.
for different demands, right? Whether it's like
Yes.
Yeah, because I guess you're right on the fact that there's not one privacy enhancing technology that will solve all the problems. So you have to kind of mix and match, like depending on the use case, right?
Yeah, it's like, and the trade-off space is not simple. So what these modules do is to simplify that choice. Because I mean, for example, if you compare the three ways of building MPC, which is from garbled circuits, from linear secret sharing, or from FHE. Each one has a different, the hits a different point in trade-off space of round complexity, how many rounds of communication between the nodes, of bandwidth requirements or communication complexity, and computational complexity, so how much CPU you need, or GPU. And it's really hard to make that choice. And also you have different flavors of security. You have active security, passive security. So it is kind of complex, and you need to know cryptography to be able to make those calls. So we are providing, for experts, they do have the ability to kind of make those choices. But if you wish, they are like, it is like programming at machine code level. But we also package these blind modules and these SDKs with pre-made choices that we know that are the best combinations, so that you don't need to know about all these details and complexity.
I see. Yeah, I think that would certainly be very helpful for a lot of developers, because in the past, when I was just briefly trying to learn a bit about cryptography. Actually, my major in university was also mathematics, but I'm like,
cool.
My level was very low. So obviously, I think I gave up when it comes to cryptography. But yeah, it's super complex math, and I think usually require like even advanced degree, right, with focus. I think, yeah. So I think simplifying and developers are much better at building software, right? Not like trying to learn the mathematics and So
building for developers, I think, is the key. So that's why we have these documents, this documentation. We have a section where you can learn a little bit about the underlying cryptographic technologies, like the privacy enhancing technologies. But very quickly you jump into the SDKs and you have examples, so you can learn by example, and you can start building things really, really quickly. First locally in your computer, but also you can then deploy to the testnet. And then you have a community of people, ready to help you out. We have it in Discord, we have in Telegram. So you're not alone if you want to build on Nillion. That's kind of the idea. It's super important, I think, to have all these resources for developers and for the community.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. So I think earlier, I think you mentioned that your technology will enable people to just enable developer to use this and build application on other existing blockchains. Is that correct?
So you can think of like there's two types of developers. One is if you're coming from a Web2 background and you want to decentralize part of your solution or all of it. There you don't necessarily need to interface with blockchains because your solution will be primarily Web2, facing. So yeah, you will have your Web2 users, and then imagine that you want to store secrets and compute on them, and you want to use this decentralized infrastructure to provide your users with better security guarantees. So you can do that without connecting to any blockchain. Now, if you are a Web3 developer and you have like a smart contract, or you're developing a decentralized app, you're going to want to use our infrastructure in a way that is able to interface with that smart contract. So you will want our infrastructure to be able to listen to events that are happening on your blockchain, as well as to be able to run some computations on inputs, maybe taken from the blockchain or maybe taken from other sources, like directly from the user, and then write back the result or some function on computed on the result into the smart contract, into the blockchain. That's where you use this connection. That's where you need this ability to interface with blockchains. And the way back, writing back on a smart contract, is done through by signing a transaction, but the signature protocol is also decentralized, so that the keys are stored in a decentralized way, and you're able to make the node sign on your behalf without reconstructing the key.
Cool. Yeah, I think that certainly helped. Would you say that majority of your application up until now have been developer building in Web3, or as I some Web2 as well, or mainly Web3?
I think half and half.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, we have like in Web3, we have people building games where they want to keep the private state, the state of the game private, so that they can give guarantees that they're not tampering with that randomness that is so important for the game, and they're not taking economic advantage out of the users. We also have people building things like decentralized exchanges or applications around DeFi, also private voting. There's a whole range of applications on Web3 and people building on that. But then on Web2, we also have users or developers building things around healthcare. The pattern, I think the general pattern is, number one, store information in a decentralized way on our network, and number two, perform computations on top of that information. So if that information, for example, is captured by wearables, and it pertains to your health parameters, that's really sensitive. So that's captured there. And then you can open up the ability for third parties to gain insights from that data, but without accessing that data, just the insight, and pay you in exchange for that. So you can it kind of places you in the center, in the control room of your data, and you are able to monetize it if you want, or otherwise you can just store it there. Compared to the current state of the art, which is you give away your data to a third party, to a centralized company, which has the control over your data and can do stuff with it without your permission. So it's kind of a radical shift of where the power lies and who has the power. And also there's Web2 applications. Well, with AI, we have both from Web3, from Web3 angle, where you want to do agents, but those agents interact with blockchains. But also we have like the Web2 angle, where you have agents, but they live in the Web2 space. They don't necessarily interact with the blockchain. So it's half and half, more or less, I would say.
Interesting. Cool. Wow. Yeah. So I mean, you guys been for years. So yeah, I'm actually quite curious about like what. So I mean, since you guys been going live and been helping developers involve Web2 and Web3 for a while, what is your like business model on this for the company?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Oh yeah, the question is, what is the business model of the company?
Yeah. So we're not a company. We're a Web3 company, right? So there is an association / foundation, and we're building public infrastructure essentially. So everything is incentivized by a token, so that every stakeholder has incentives aligned, and everyone kind of does their role. So it doesn't matter if you're running a node in the blockchain or running a node in the petnet of these clusters that I mentioned before, or if you are developing cryptographic protocols, or if you're developing applications, or if you're using those applications. There are incentives in place for all those stakeholders through the token. And yeah, that's kind of the reason. I don't think this company could be built in a centralized way. I don't think it would require a lot of money to pay all these people to the developers, the protocol developers. It's just too big for any Web2 and enterprise or endeavor, unless you have a lot of money. But it would really require like hundreds of millions of dollars, if not billions. So I think it can only be built in Web3. That's the magic of it, right? You can build with the community instead of a more traditional take on, oh, I'm the service provider and you're paying me to access the services. This is like a different take on that, where the infrastructure we're building is essentially public, it's open source, and people can use it and can contribute to the platform.
I see. Cool. Yeah, that makes sense. I think that's one thing that I also love about Web3, right? Not that the open source software is like essentially free and people can use it. People can also contribute to it. Yeah, I don't think. I mean, I think we see some of that in Web2 as well. But in Web3, it's just like 10x bigger, right? It's just a whole. I think like most of the code that I've seen, I would say like 95% is like open source and transparent on GitHub, like public repo. Like everyone can kind of contribute, of course. But yeah,
I think it's beautiful, and also it leads to better code because there's more eyes on it. There's people reviewing it constantly, and finding vulnerabilities, which is very important in privacy enhancing technologies, right? So even if your maths are correct, you can make a mistake when you implement them, and you can open up vulnerabilities. But since there's many people looking into the code and working on it and wanting to understand it, that kind of offers the guarantees for people that that code is sound, that there's no problem. Obviously, we also do audits, but those there's those are done by fewer people than the amount of people that can access the code. So in the end, it also results in a better code, code with better quality and better security, which is fundamental for this solution.
Cool. Yeah. Makes sense. Regarding the labs or Nillion Labs, right, that you work for, like how many people are in your organization at the moment?
So I think we're around 40, something like that. Yeah. So
Mainly.
mostly engineers, and then kind of business people, business development and marketing and things like that.
Cool.
So
Yeah.
it's a small, it's a rather small community, but as I said before, there's almost like an invisible distinction because there's a gradient between a full-time employee
Yeah.
to full-time contractor to part-time contractor to then community people interested, just contributing to the project because they're interested, right? So there's this kind of almost natural gradient between those, and the end result is that you have, it's not just a circle of people, it's like a sun with different degrees of intensity of people collaborating, but you have like the communities is way bigger than that, of course. And we're really decentralized as well, as an organization, so there's people all over the planet, which is cool, but it's also it also has its own challenges attached, right? How do you align all those people? But it's, in a sense, it's a good training exercise for how decentralization works, because in the end, these protocols are also led by people all around the planet. So I think it forces us to define very well the decision making processes, and optimize them accordingly. So I think it's a good exercise as a decentralized company.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's also another beautiful thing about Web3. Like, you have people from all over the world coming
Yeah.
together and working together, right? It might very different time zone, maybe also different like first language as well, but usually like speaking English or
Yes.
another language
Yes.
in common, right? And then work together, contribute. And then, I mean, if you add in the communities and things just get bigger and bigger, right?
Yeah, you can see that in our Discord channel. We have like, I don't know how
Yeah.
many languages, but there's many. So yeah, that reflects the international nature of this project.
Exciting. So, I mean, working in like a decentralized company, organization, what are some of the common challenges like facing your team?
Yeah, I would say time zones are a problem.
Yeah.
Sometimes we end up meeting in the events, right? When we go to Bangkok or Singapore or Denver, that's when we have the chance to actually see each other and do some work. That is usually productive. But yeah, location and time zone, I think, is a major challenge. Also, I would say there's not so many people. The resources are very expensive for Web3. So there's not so many people, for example, with knowledge at the intersection of highly mathematical protocols and engineering, like programming, how to program them. Because usually you either have good engineers, but if you put them in front of a mathematical paper, they don't understand it, or the other way around. They understand the paper, but they don't have the expertise to actually implement a production level system out of that. So it's getting better, but there's also, again, a whole gradient of skills between those two extremes, and we need to fill them all. We need people in different points in that scale, so that knowledge goes from theory to implementation in a seamless way, and it doesn't get lost in translation. And also, I think on the marketing side, there's a special type of genius required to make it work, because this is mostly about the community, right? So you need to connect, you need to create mindshare and to be able to connect with community, and conveying such complex concepts as the ones we work with, like cryptographic protocols, to the wider audience is always a challenge. That's why I think it's been amazing to come up with the idea of a blind computer, because I think it kind of explains what it does very easily, and you kind of create a mental picture of what it does. And we're really lucky, I think, on that front as well. We have Charlie, who's our head of marketing. He led this tuk-tuk campaign in Bangkok. It was amazing. He branded with Nillion, with the Nillion brand, 100 tuk-tuks or so, and offered them for free for people to go, to transfer them between events. And then he created mechanisms to, because that's a physical thing, right? So if you are there, you learn about it, but you don't necessarily learn about it if you're in Twitter. So then he created mechanisms to move that into the crypto space, into Twitter. And then he executed on that, which is not easy. He ended up creating an Uber app. Like, it had its own app with a map and
Nice.
all of that. So it's like this type of genius, like who's not only able to come up with the idea, but actually execute on it in such an amazing way in just a few weeks. That's really rare. And it's so important, because without that, you may have the best technology in the world, your project won't fly. You need primarily community, I would say.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think what you said, I mean, some of the points that I've also seen in many other guests that I'll appear on my podcast also. Like, one is that, yeah, it's very hard to find, because usually it requires, like, well, for the people who work on Web3, it require intersection of multiple disciplines, right? Like, I think what you said is like mathematical prowess plus like programming. But I think for each of the discipline, like math, I mean, you can easily take, like, I don't know, 5-10 years, right, to be like an expert in the subdomain of math, not like all the math, but subdomain, right? And then programming also, like, maybe, I don't know, another 5-10 years, and then so you add them together. Of course, nowadays you have like artificial intelligence, but you can still like substitute that with just human brain power. For sure. Yeah.
And one additional challenge for us, I think, is that because we're mixing different privacy enhancing technologies, it's actually hard to do. These communities have been living in silos. Like, the zero knowledge proof community is very different from the multi-party computation community, which is very different from the fully homomorphic encryption community, for a reason, because the underlying maths are quite different. So they have their own papers and publications, their own conferences, and they usually don't get mixed. But if, since we want to mix them all in one pot, in one infrastructure, we need experts in all of them. And that's really, that's an additional kind of level of complexity. You're not just working with one, you're working with all of them. And you need to combine them. So you need the joint knowledge from all these different domains, and to cross those bridges between those different silos, and actually to be able to combine them beautifully in a single solution. That's a significant challenge as well. So it's not just between maths and engineering, it's also between the different domains in the maths, in the cryptographic space.
Yeah, for sure. And then, but I mean, combining that, but you still need to turn it into a product that will be helpful for people, right? Yeah,
exactly.
Like,
and that people understand, which is not easy.
Exactly.
So
and
it is like
yeah, and then having the marketing genius, like you said, your colleague, right, who came up with, what is it? I think you said like tuk branded event or image, right?
Yeah.
I think that was very super creative, right? Yeah,
that was amazing because everyone was, fighting for side events. They're really expensive, but there were already like hundreds of them. Instead of that, he came up with the idea of connecting people, between events, like, offering the transportation solution. So between events, all they were seeing is Nillion everywhere. So that was a space of their day, that where people were not bombarded by other brands or companies where they had their time to sit down, relax on the tuk-tuk while seeing Nillion everywhere, and also interact with a lot of activities that he created to then, move that into crypto Twitter. And it just proved to be an amazing solution to a very difficult problem. So, kudos to him. That was really amazing.
Yeah, for sure. I think, when I was in Bangkok that time, I might have seen the tuk tuk. I didn't get the chance to ride it though, but I think I might have seen it on the road. Yeah, that was super
It was so
brilliant.
powerful that I was talking to people then in the events, explaining all the maths and the complex stuff. And after a while, they would say, "Oh, you're the tuk-tuk guys." Yeah, okay, yeah, that's it. So yeah, so it's very powerful at capturing mindshare. And then all you need to do is to say, "Oh, we're the tuk-tuk guys, and this is what we do." So I ended up then turning around, my pitch, and started with, "Have you seen the tuk-tuks? That's us. And by the way, this is what we do."
Nice. That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I think in the end, well, if you want people to kind of remember more about your technology, right? Maybe make it simple and something that associate, right? Yeah, no, I think that's
Memorable.
super on point, memorable, right? Yeah, because I think at the end of the day, like just our technology in our industry is like super complex. It is like very difficult, even for people inside the industry like me. It still takes like a lot of time to understand.
Yeah.
So I mean, if you bring like external people, right, I don't think most of you would even know. Probably, I think very small percentage of the world would have a deep understanding of Web3. So like external, like it's pretty hard.
Yeah.
So how to translate that? Cool. Just want to peer your brain into some of the questions about the future. One is that since you're working in like the forefront of Web3 and privacy, so how do you think like Web3 privacy will evolve in the next few years?
So I think privacy was always part of the decentralized ethos, but because we were so focused around transactions, we just didn't see it. So what is decentralization about, right? It's about removing control from centralized entities. And what do they control? Well, they control the way they provision the service to us. For example, they can change the nature of that service, and that has to do with integrity. And they can also deny us access to that service, which has to do with censorship. Those are the things that Web3 initially occupied itself in solving. Those were the initial targets. Why? Well, because those are the things that matter if you are working with transactions. You want to have access. You don't want the service to change, because if it changes, then it means that people can do double spending and things like that. So then the rules of the games are changed, and you don't want to be prevented from accessing that. But if you go beyond that, there's so many other examples that you can find in Web2 where privacy is important. That and also, if you think about it, privacy is also a form of control. So if companies have access to your information, they are controlling all that aspect of your life, which is really important. So decentralization also pertains to the process of removing control from your personal data, and the way to do that is through privacy. So again, if you move beyond transactions, where you find very easily, or even if you stay within transactions, but you kind of work with in a customer facing or in a consumer facing domain, like for example, you try to implement credit card payments on top of a blockchain, then you will soon find you will stumble upon roadblocks that are put there because of the inability to work with privacy. So I think the future of Web3 is going to be that it's going to evolve into technologies that are able to combine the two forms of decentralization. So decentralization around the service provisioning aspect of things, and around the data that those services manipulate and work on. And I think the blind computer is a good example of that, because it contains this traditional blockchain element, but it also contains this other new element that is able to provide protection against misuse of your information. And I think privacy enhancing technologies, they have reached maturity enough, the maturity required to be production in production systems, but there is still quite a long way in terms of improving their performance. The security is fine, but mostly their performance. And there's been everyone is doing like a lot of improvement and development on this. For example, we recently did a work in collaboration with Meta to significantly accelerate private inference of large language models by using techniques from digital signal processing. So there's a lot of room for improvement. And I think that's going to make privacy even more ubiquitous in Web3, because right now maybe the problem that developers find is that I want to use it for this, but actually is too slow for that, right? In the meantime, in the interim, I think TEs are going to play an important role because they are fast enough, I think, for most applications. It is true that they don't offer the best security guarantees, but they are like a platform from which you can progressively then add more and more software-based cryptographic guarantees using MPC or using FHE or ZKP. And then you find this situation where you gradually can move away from a pure hardware-based solution to one that mixes increasingly more and more software-based privacy-enhancing technologies, more MPC and more FHE, until eventually you end up with running everything under software. So I think that's kind of the evolution that we're going to be seeing in Web3.
Cool. Yeah, I do hope so as well too. So I think what you said is very, very striking. That stuck with me is like decentralization is about removing the control and also like consumer taking back the control of themselves. Yeah, which is super important. And then I think actually I'm quite curious. I think you said that so for PET we still have a long way to go in terms of improving performance. Right now security is fine. Is it more like is it because of a hardware limit? So like software limit, what is the limit there? Like it's something, right? Yeah.
Yeah, mostly it's hardware.
Okay.
As for example, there's been a lot of development of hardware for AI models. It turns out that typically those improvements also benefit PETs. For example, better GPUs typically have a positive impact on PETs. So there is a component that is hardware, CPU mostly. There's also a component that is bandwidth. So being able to send more information, and bandwidth is not naturally limited by anything. There's no for example, propagation time is limited by the speed of light. Compute time in the end is kind of limited also by the speed of light, because you cannot shrink the microprocessors as much as you want, because you end up having quantum effects and things like that. But bandwidth is not. So there is part that is hardware based or network based, but there is another part that is purely software based. So the solution I described with Meta, that's purely software based. It's just a better cryptographic protocol that requires less compute time, less bandwidth, less everything to do the task at hand. So there's a little bit of improvement coming from specialization. So if you're able to restrict the domain from general purpose to, now I just want to do, LLM inference, chances are that you're going to be able to create something that is more performant than the general purpose protocol. And that's a big component of the improvements that have been made. And just to give you an example, within the last 5 years, we went all the way from being able to just run a few, models with a few thousand parameters to now being able to run models with billions of parameters in just 5 years. So
wow.
There's a lot of improvement, and that's just the software element.
I see. Yeah. So I guess one of the winners for all this AI race is going to be NVIDIA, right?
Yes,
They're going to keep
absolutely.
releasing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
it all started with games, but
right.
the serendipity or luck, they find themselves now in a very, very good position, actually.
Yeah. But I mean, NVIDIA has been building at this for 30 something years. I think the founder. Yeah. So he's probably been seeing it. Yeah. Oh, that's crazy. Yeah. So I mean, from what I know right now, Web3 infrastructure, a lot about nodes, validators, servers, whatever it is actually, I think majority, I don't remember the exact number, but probably maybe half or even more than half is still run on Web2 centralized infra, right? Which is like on cloud provider, which is like centralized. So I mean, you were talking a lot about like decentralization. So I was just wondering, want to hear your take on this. Like, how can we change that in the future, or how?
Yeah, I think we can change it.
Yeah.
And this architecture of clusters give you a lot of freedom to do that, in the sense that some clusters may, for different reasons, they may prefer, to have like companies running them, because maybe it is a Web2 application and you prefer having like different banks running different nodes. You have guarantees that they're not going to be colluding because they're competing against each other, things like that, or maybe nodes from different industries. But some other clusters, more consumer based, or consumer geared, I think they want to be wanting to have more permissionlessness, and they want to be wanting to have more normal people run those nodes, and that's where Nillion touches on DeepIn, and where it also becomes important that those nodes don't see your information if you want to store data on them, if you want to run computations on them, so that you get the guarantees that those people, people running those nodes cannot access your secrets. So I think we're going to be seeing like a mixture of both. Like for Web3 applications, we will tend to have like larger clusters run by regular nodes, but maybe for Web2 applications, we will have special requirements also for regulatory compliance needs. Some regulations require the nodes to be in a certain jurisdiction, and so we will see some requirements around that, and maybe the nodes will be run by centralized entities.
I see. Cool. Yeah. I think, well, obviously we cannot replace the giants or substitute. I think many companies still depend on them. So, but I think hope that for the
and one vision that we have is that you decide who runs your cluster, right? So ideally for me would be like a group of friends and family, people I really trust, so that you can really configure clusters on the fly and have them run, have people in your close range of friends and people you trust run those clusters for additional degree of security. That's also doable, because now you don't have this single network of nodes. You have different clusters, and every cluster really can be configured as you wish.
Yeah, I think customized solution is hopefully will be the way to go for how things want to get done. Cool. For Nillion, what can you share with us? What's in the future roadmap for Nillion?
Yeah, so I think you have the community aspect and then the tech aspect of the question. The community, I would say, just keep on growing, right? So we recently we were working the first 2 years really heads down, and we were not interacting with the wider community, because this is not something you can build by taking off the shelf components. You really have to create them. So it took us a lot of time to actually create that kind of base ground like level or kind of infrastructure, and now last year we started reaching out for the wider community, and I think that's going to continue. That's going to be like a main point of focus for us, to create even more documentation, to create more hackathons, to interact and engage with the community, so that essentially we bring in more brains and eyes into the project. And then regarding the technology, it's very exciting because we're moving now from testnet to mainnet. So that's very exciting. And also we're launching the first developers. They have already built their solutions, and they're going to be launching within the next few weeks and months. And for example, we recently had Zap Labs launch their solution, and in the first week they just got 30,000 users, and they're all like real users, because they're coming from WorldCoin, which means they're authenticated through their iris. So it's real users, real active users, and it's just amazing to see projects succeed building on top of our platform.
I think that's really cool to hear that like real application being built. So I guess you guys will plan to go mainnet sometime in 2025, right? Obviously we don't have enough time for this year anymore, so
it's gonna be soon.
Awesome. Cool. Yeah, just two more questions before we close out the show. I think one is that you have any advice for people who want to run their own Web3 company organization?
Yeah, good question. So it's I think you need at least a heavily technical co-founder and then a heavily commercial co-founder. And then probably if not co-founders, the next important hires are going to be marketing and also legal. It really depends on a little bit how where is your specific domain. But in our case, for example, legal was very important.
Interesting.
And
Why? Can I ask why? Yeah.
well, again, we're building something new, and we cannot just copy paste things from other projects. So we really have to, and it involves also personal information, highly sensitive data. So we really have to start from scratch and think about what are the implications, how can we provide the guarantees to people, all the things around compliance and things like that. And yeah, I would say that you really need to be ready for a really intense time of your lives, because this is something that if you don't reach that critical point of effort that you invest into the project, you're not gonna get you're not gonna succeed. I think you need that critical mass of effort. Sometimes you leave the Zoom call open with other co-founders and nonstop and working your way through the day and and part of the night. It's just part of the game. So it's going to be an intensive experience, but I would say is one of the best places to start a company right now, because everything is so innovation friendly. People are really open to new ideas, and there's a lot of also capital and money in the space. I would say is the right place to innovate, almost like regardless of your project, if it's health or if it's AI or if it's really. I can imagine that Web3 is gonna be it's gonna even grow larger than what it currently is, in part because of its new ability to now deal with personal data, which was kind of the big hurdle that it found before, that it prevented it from growing. So yeah, I would encourage them to go ahead, embrace for bumps and an epic ride, but I think it's totally worth it. It's the right place to be.
Awesome. Yeah, I think I also quite understand the point about you do have to grind and grit, keeping perseverant, right? Don't give up until you reach critical points. I'm quite curious, in your journey here, when you first started building Nillion, how long until from the point when you started the idea, when it was only an idea, right, up until now? I guess how many months or how many years did it take to reach the critical point that you said?
Yeah, well, I had been working for almost 2 years.
Wow.
Yeah, in the kind of the different privacy enhancing technologies before we kind of said, oh, now we have something, we can get it started.
Nice. Yeah. So I guess it's just you just couldn't. It's good to keep persevering, right? Obviously, you cannot just give up after 6 months or a year.
Yeah.
Some this very long road.
Yeah.
Super,
and it's very important that prep time, because once you start it, there's like a clock time, ticking against you, because you need to be very fast and move things very quickly, in order for it, in order to make it happen. So you better have it figured out, in advance, ahead in time, what is it that you want to build, and actually the solution, ideally, as well. There won't be any time after that to improvise.
Thank you. Yeah, these are really golden advice. Cool. And then final question: where can people follow you or your company? Feel free to share any public handles or username.
Sure. So I think the best place to go is our website, so nillion.com. And on the top right, if you look at before the part where I show the screen, you have all the media stuff. You have Telegram, you have Discord, you have X. You can, if you're a developer, probably you want to go to docs.nillion.com, the section that we saw. Probably you want to also take a look at masquerade.nillion.com for some examples, some demos for inspiration. And also engage with the Discord community and perhaps Telegram. Otherwise, if you just want to, get the news, the latest news from what we're doing, I think X is the best platform to do that. And my personal X handle is at Miguel underscore DE underscore VEGA Vega.
Cool, simple enough. Yeah, I'll make sure to put all the links in the show notes below here so people can actually follow along and then click on to follow you and your company. Miguel, it's been a real pleasure speaking to you about Nillion and the future of Web3 privacy. Hopefully, I hope your company the best of luck moving forward. The road to Mainnet, right? 25. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you, Matt Lamb. It was a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. And we're back to my studio. What do you guys think about this episode? Miguel de Vega, co-founder and chief scientist at Nillion. I see a lot of potential and new application that can be built using Nillion blind computing in both Web2 and Web3. I'm sure that the team will continue to perform well leading up to the Mainnet launch. Well, as for me, my team and I will be taking some time off for a couple of weeks to rest and recharge, and then we'll resume again with new episodes in 2025. If you enjoyed this episode, please give a like, subscribe to stay tuned for future episodes in 2025. Thank you so much for watching, and see you next time.